The iron gibbet terrified pirates more than the gallows itself, because death was only the beginning of a punishment that left their rotting bodies hanging above the sea for years, stripped apart by storms, birds, and salt, while every passing sailor watched a human skeleton sway in the wind and understood that anyone who raised the black flag would be remembered not as a legend, but as a warning that never stopped screaming. Enjoy the video, and don't forget to subscribe. Trace your finger along the map from the Bahamas toward the approaches of the English Channel, and imagine the sharp smell of rotting oak mingling with boiling pine tar, damp end rope, stagnant bilge water, and lingering sulfur drifting across gray Atlantic waves beneath low clouds, while snapping canvas echoes through weathered rigging and dead eyes groan beneath tremendous strain. Picture the year 1722, when the Golden Age of Piracy had begun collapsing beneath relentless naval patrols, expanding admiralty courts, and increasingly ruthless public punishments designed not merely to execute criminals but to terrify entire maritime communities. Merchant captains feared the gallows, yet pirates feared something even worse: the iron gibbet. Unlike an ordinary hanging, the gibbeting transformed a corpse into a permanent warning suspended above rivers, harbors, and busy shipping lanes, where thousands of sailors could never avoid its dreadful presence. Massive wrought iron bars, heated inside charcoal furnaces exceeding 2,000 degrees Fahrenheit before being hammered by blacksmiths, were shaped into human-sized cages, measuring nearly 6 feet in height, and reinforced with riveted hoops capable of surviving decades of wind, rain, salt spray, and winter frost. Every cage weighed roughly 100 pounds and surrounded the body without fully enclosing it, allowing birds, insects, sunlight, and weather to slowly strip away flesh while leaving the skeleton visible for years. Authorities selected elevated headlands, tide estuaries, and harbor entrances because every incoming vessel would immediately recognize the swaying silhouette, understanding that the Crown possessed not only powerful warships, but absolute control over the fate awaiting captured pirates. Picture the execution morning beginning long before sunrise, as carpenters inspected towering timber posts exceeding 30 feet in height, while blacksmiths examined every rivet securing the gibbet cage, knowing failure would embarrass the Crown before hundreds of spectators. After the condemned pirate died upon the rope, the body was rarely buried immediately. Instead, officials carefully measured the corpse, sometimes bending stiffening joints, so the remains could fit inside the narrow iron framework designed around average adult proportions rather than individual anatomy. Iron collars locked around the neck, curved bands restrained the chest, and forged straps surrounded the thighs and ankles, preventing the skeleton from falling apart as decomposition gradually destroyed muscles, ligaments, and internal organs. Exposure beside tidal rivers accelerated decay because humid sea air deposited microscopic salt crystals across skin and clothing, while alternating sunshine, rainfall, and freezing nights repeatedly expanded and contracted organic tissue. Galleon crows, ravens, gulls, and insects quickly discovered the suspended body, removing soft tissue piece by piece until only darkened leather, scraps of cloth, and exposed bone remained. The location itself carried strategic importance. Busy approaches to London, Portsmouth, Bristol, and other commercial ports ensured thousands of merchant sailors, naval officers, fishermen, and dock workers witnessed the spectacle every year. Unlike a simple execution hidden behind prison walls, the gibbet never stopped delivering its message. Long after judges, executioners, and witnesses had disappeared, the creaking iron cage continued swaying above power. Salt crystals accumulated across exposed bone. Rust stained the remaining clothing reddish brown, and every strong gust forced the cage to rotate with a slow metallic groan, audible well above the slapping tide. Many contemporary journals described crews making the sign of the cross, or refusing to look directly at the remains. Believing an unburied pirate could never truly rest. Officials deliberately encouraged such fear because the gibbet functioned as an instrument of state authority, more effective than countless written proclamations. A sailor considering mutiny, or accepting articles of agreement from a pirate captain, no longer imagined overflowing treasure chests, but remembered ribs visible through corroded iron bands and empty eye sockets facing the sea. During storms, the spectacle became even more terrifying. Gale force winds exceeding 50 miles per hour twisted the suspended cage, while rain washed decomposing tissue onto the timbers below, and lightning briefly illuminated the skeleton figure against black clouds. Passing vessels recorded the landmark in their sailing directions, because the hanging corpse remained visible for years, sometimes becoming as recognizable to navigators as a lighthouse, church tower, or prominent cliff, proving that the British authorities intended punishment to outlive the criminal by an entire generation. Picture the blacksmith who forged the gibbet beginning with long bars of low-carbon wrought iron, refined inside a bloomery, before repeated heating and handling expelled slag, producing tough fibrous metal capable of resisting sudden fracture despite years of exposure to salt-laden air. Each curved edge had to match the dimensions of the human torso closely enough to prevent the corpse from slipping free, while leaving sufficient openings for wind and rain to pass through, accelerating natural decomposition rather than preserving the remains. Rivets were driven wide through overlapping joints before being pinned flat with heavy sledges, creating permanent connections that could withstand constant vibration generated by Atlantic storms. The supporting post demanded equal care. Builders selected seasoned oak trunks, exceeding 12 inches in diameter, buried several feet into compact soil, and reinforced with stone packing so the structure could resist decades of weather. At prominent estuaries, the cage often hung high enough for the tide, fog, and changing sunlight to make the silhouette visible from vessels still miles offshore. The body itself gradually transformed through predictable stages. Internal bacteria multiplied after death. Gases expanded the abdomen. Insects deposited eggs inside exposed wounds, and larvae rapidly consumed soft tissue before birds scattered remaining fragments across the shoreline. Months later, only dried tendons and weather-darkened bones remained secured inside the iron frame. Yet even then, the punishment had not truly ended. Rust spread across every forged bar, producing reddish streaks that blended with old bloodstains and torn clothing, creating an unforgettable image that merchants, naval recruits, and fishermen carried in memory long after their ships disappeared beyond the horizon. By the late 1720s, the gibbet had become one of the most feared symbols of imperial justice, because every rusting cage proved that execution was only the beginning of the punishment. Pirate crews understood that death offered no quick escape from disgrace, every ship entering the harbor saw exactly what awaited those who sailed beneath the black flag.